Good evening and welcome back to another edition of the My Team Sports Podcast. I am your host, the one and only Dallin Thomar Taylor, Mr. Energy himself. It is I can't even say it's another beautiful day in my neighborhood. I'm not gonna lie. For Florida standards, it's kind of brick out here. Just saying. It's just about like 49 degrees. There hasn't been a lot of sun out today. It's been kind of cloudy. It's been a little rainy. We had that light drizzling cold rain that is kind of annoying that won't go anyway. More importantly, Happy New Year, everybody, because it is also January 3rd, which means it's the very first time that we're talking to each other since 2018. But regardless of what year it is, and regardless of the time,
take that.
and regardless of the weather,
Hello? You play to win the game.
we are still gonna stay here and talk some sports. Let's start talking. Woo! Back at it like a sports fanatic. Ooh, I can't even control myself today. It's one of those days in sports. It's just a really good. We have a slew of things to talk about, but you know what? Let's just get right into it. Let's not waste any more time. Let's not waste any more time.
First of all, first things first.
I want to say happy birthday to Eli Manning. Eli Manning turns 37. I believe it's today, actually. Right? He was either today or yesterday. But Eli Manning turns 37. And listen, for a person that's actually right around the corner from 37. Actually, I turned 37 this year. So me and Eli Manning are just about the same age. And I'm going to tell you, at this point in time in your life, if you've been a physical, and I really want to talk to the physical, because I know there's a bunch of people that aren't really physical, that's feeling their bodies every single day. I don't know if I'm talking to you guys. I'm talking to us physical people. You have to remember, you guys have to remember, I used to be a soldier, so there's not a day that doesn't go by that I still don't put myself through some kind of physical activity and some kind of even mediocre, minuscule workout session if I have to. Something very small. Doesn't have to be a lot. Just enough. So I'm talking to them, and at this point in time in your age, you automatically start to feel all the little bumps, the little bruises. Exactly what they say, like, you just don't recover, or you don't realize how much your body is in pain when it comes to the recovery. Like, maybe that's what it is. Like, it's like the older you get, like, and I don't get a chance to play sports as much as I used to, but I feel like anytime I have to go, I go hard, I blank out and I go hard, I feel soreness in a different muscle group that I didn't quite know either that I still had or can still possibly get sore. So cool. So happy birthday to our boy Eli Manning, the quarterback of the New York Giants, as he's turned 37. And he is attempting to go ahead and make another start an NFL career. I should say start an NFL career, but he wants to continue his NFL career. And he wants to continue starting at that. Now, if that's in New York or if that's elsewhere, that is yet to be seen. But happy birthday, Eli Manning. He will be quarterbacking again somewhere next year, possibly as a starter. And he, like he said, hey, all he really wants to do is to go and trap it with the shooters. No, he wants to compete. Eli Manning wants to compete. Next up.
First of all, first things first.
The Cleveland Browns. As the NFL season wraps up and we're going to have our Week 17 wrap-up as we break that down and get into who made these playoffs. But it's one thing that you have to know, that the Cleveland Browns have browned the place. And what I mean by that is that the Cleveland Browns last year won one game, folks. For those that don't know, They won one game last year. And because of that, of winning one game, their head coach came out and said, listen, if I can't manage to win more than one game this next year, then I'll go jump inside the Hudson River. And I don't want to say that he's a man of his word, but I mean, because definitely he's playing that part. But those guys did not win one game. Actually, those guys didn't win a game all season. Yes, you hear me say it. The Cleveland Browns managed to not win a single game this whole entire season. So, I think their head coach should do a little bit more than just jump inside the lake. He needs to exile himself from the National Football League. There's no reason why he should continue to be coaching that team. And listen, I can perfectly understand at this point why there are any prospects that says, I don't want to go to this Brown show. Because all the Cleveland Browns do is happen to brown up the place. Just brown everywhere they go. They brown everything they touch. Everything they touch turns to brown. But that's a lot of young talent on that team. You just can't develop people, which is completely something different that we're going to talk about when it comes to me in a couple episodes down the road. But it makes sense why nobody wants to go to that team. Why you have these college players talking about, hey, we don't want to play for you. And talking about college players.
First of all, first things first.
The college football playoffs are shaping up. Or I shouldn't say they are shaping up. The college football finals have shaped up. And we finally have our two finalists. And what a way for us to get to these two finalists, right? Because in one game, we had the Georgia Bulldogs versus the Oklahoma Sooner Boomers, right? You had the Heisman Trophy winner versus a really good Georgia team that felt very disrespected, that has a monstrous running game and a smothering defense. Not to say that all of these teams in the college football playoff doesn't have some kind of semi-pro level defense at this point in time, but Georgia has a defense that can get to that passer, that can get to the passer. And not only that, they basically have a pro-style running game. And they have a way that they could just run through people. And that's kind of what we saw in Oklahoma. In the Oklahoma game, that was phenomenal, by the way. It was high scoring. Oklahoma went up early. Baker Mayfield was celebrating. You understand? Like, he was basically booting them boys off of the field. And then halftime came around. Georgia said, hey, are we Chihuahuas or are we Bulldogs? And some little guy in the corner tried to squeak, but somebody came up and said, nah, we're Bulldogs. And they came in that second half, and they brought that defense. They rushed the passer. They ran that ball. And next thing you know, we are looking into overtime. And next thing you know, the Heisman Trophy winner is sitting in front of the podium, giving a post-game interview, talking about how disappointed he is to not being able to win for his alma mater, for his team, for a team that he know that he's leaving this year, a team that he walked on to and became the starting quarterback. This guy cried at the loss because losing hurt more than winning felt like. He hated to lose more than he hated to not win. That makes sense. So we have Georgia advancing to the college football finals. That was your 2 and 3 seed. Overtime game. Phenomenal. Excitement. Drama. Controversy. Nail-biting action. And then we got Clemson versus Alabama. And what we got there was not just the complete opposite of the early game between Georgia and Oklahoma, but we also got the opposite of these two teams' two previous matchups. Where if you've seen these guys play before, you know that they've left it all on the floor. And there's no way you could deny that. Their first game came down to a college football championship, and it was a last-minute play. Their second game was a college football championship, and it came down to a last-second play. And this game was basically over by halftime. Now, not in the sense that the score was out of reach. In the sense that it didn't look like Clemson could make up those points. And listen, this is not to say that Clemson hasn't done it before. It is to say that you looked at Clemson and didn't think that they can do it now. And this is not even to say that, listen, Clemson hasn't started off a first half slow and found a way to come back. But now you're seeing why Deshaun Watson is Deshaun Watson. And why, even though he was still learning how to win in Houston, he was getting all of those praises in Houston. It's the reason why you can see Dabo Swinney calling him the Michael Jordan of quarterbacks when he's not even willing to call his current quarterback the Scottie Pippen of quarterbacks. This game was a blowout. Clemson couldn't even put up a touchdown. They couldn't score 7 points. They were undisciplined. And they lost that game. And now what we have is a matchup between Georgia and Roll Tide, Alabama. And I'll be damned if I have any reason to go against a motivated Alabama team that is playing like an underdog. Because while Georgia may be the Bulldogs, Alabama is playing like an underdog. Which means that they are playing like the hungrier dog. And for a team that is used to sitting on the top of the mountain, for them to now come out and hunt instead of being the hunted is a scary thing. It's going to take some discipline. And man, are we going to be excited to see this. And we're going to talk some more sports when we come back from this commercial break.
Come on down to
XF Martial Arts, where you'll be able to take part in learning all the disciplines you need to be an extreme freestyle martial arts machine. Whether it's taekwondo, karate, yoga, summer, spring, or fall, XF Martial Arts has it all. For more information, class times, and dates, don't wait. Go to xfmartialarts.com and reserve your spot today. That's XF Martial Arts, located at 2875 South Congress Avenue, Suite D, Delray Beach, Florida, 33445. Or call 561-276-1774 and ask to speak with Sensei Cohen to reserve your free trial week. Just tell him myt-sports sent you. XF Martial Arts, where fun and discipline are one. And we are back to the Mighty Sports Podcast. Whew, if you're still listening, I want to thank you. That means you're listening right here live on mytradio.net. Like I said, this is the Mighty Sports Podcast. I am your host, still Talent Omar Taylor, Mr. Energy himself. As we keep moving right along into these sports debates, as the college football season comes to its end, we are still in the muck of basketball. And pretty soon, basketball is going to take over the national sports eye. So for right now, as you guys know, there are no two teams that I love to talk about more than my beloved New York Knicks and my arch rival, the disgusting Miami Heat. But that's mainly because I am down here in Miami. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and review El Barrio.
Matter of fact, 305. I get it. I swear that I get it. We just did it, we did it. We did it. We so far from finish, I brought you right back just so we can relive it.
So yeah, folks, we are here. And we have the slate of games for the New York Knicks from the week of January 28th until today, January 3rd. Let's just say January 2nd. We got games on the docket. Very first game of the week for the New York Knicks was against the San Antonio Spurs in San Antonio. And it's one thing that we've told you about the New York Knicks this whole entire time, is that while they've had a phenomenal home record, they've had a horrific road record. And this is going to go out to the teams, or to the sports fanatics. And I'm going to call them fanatics because this isn't coming from, this can't be coming from anybody reputable. This can't be coming from anybody that has held a actual position in the league. This isn't coming from this can't be coming from anybody that was actually accredited news source or anchor or columnist or beat writer or anything like that, or somebody that used to break stories. Nah, this can't be coming from any of one of those. So whoever said this, I'm gonna call him a straight fanatic, because there was something that came out that said that the NBA wants the New York Knicks to have to make it into the playoffs. That is the reason why they front loaded their season with a bunch of home games, because they wanted to try to get them some continuity so they could start winning some games, and then hopefully it will even itself out on the back end, and then they'll make a push for the. You hear this? You hear this kind of madness? But like you know it's funny though, because you don't hear that same person complaining when the Knicks are bad, and the Knicks have a contract every single year. And it's not really the Knicks, it's the Madison Square Garden. The Madison Square Garden had a contract every single year with the Ballum and Bailey circus, that when Ringling Brothers and Ballum and Bailey circus was in town, you know what the Knicks had to do? The Knicks had to vacate the premises. So you know what the Knicks basically always had every single year, or has every single year? The Knicks have a 3 to 4 week slate of games where they are just on the road. Guess what happens when you're on the road for about 3-4 weeks? That means that at some point in time in your schedule, you're gonna have a slate of games around 3 or 4 weeks where you're gonna be heavily loaded at home. For the Knicks this year, it has happened to be in the beginning. But yet that person, I don't hear that person complaining when the Knicks had sorry teams and what that meant for, and when it came for this time of year, it just meant nothing. Or I don't even hear that person complaining when the LA Lakers have to go through a similar slate of games. Because yes, the LA Lakers have a similar contract because they also have to worry about that building, the Staples Center, and a circus coming through there as well. And there's also another 2 to 4 week time period where they just have a bunch of road games because they can't occupy their building. So now that I've gotten that off of my chest, we all know that the New York Knicks are a horrific road team. Yeah, I gotta listen to people. They just get me all kinds of fezzed up. You hear it. And they took on the San Antonio Spurs in San Antonio, and we did not expect the New York Knicks to be able to win this game, and they did it. They were embarrassed a little. I mean, the game sounds like it was closer than it was. A 12-point game, basically 6 field goals, 4 3-pointers, however you want to look at it. But the New York Knicks can't stop San Antonio, and the San Antonio Spurs can stop New York whenever they wanted to. The New York Knicks don't execute. The New York Knicks are a bunch of things that they are not. But luckily for them, New York Knicks knew how to go out the year in a bang. As they went into the New Orleans Pelicans and they took on New Orleans, we didn't expect them to win that game either because, listen, the New York Knicks just don't win games on the road. But you know what they can do? They can steal a game. And that's exactly what they did here. To end out the year, they stole a game in New Orleans. And then they went to, seriously, they took the ball in New Orleans, they stole that, they took it back to New York, they threw it on top of a building, on top of some big old rod, and they let everybody watch it drop. 105-103. Knicks. And then, there was the game last night. Well, because just to let you know, the Knicks have a doubleheader. Have a back-to-back, I should say. They had a game last night against the San Antonio Spurs, which, as you could assume, they lost that one. But they also have a game tonight against Washington, but we'll talk about that when we talk about next week's games. So, if they have a game against Washington in Washington. So, you know how I feel about that game. That game was tied at the half, but you know how I ultimately feel about that game. It's the second game off of a back-to-back, and they're on the road. That is a double dose of L's for the New York Knicks. Basically, they're going to come out that game looking like a square. You figure it out. But the New York Knicks aren't the only team that we like to follow, as you know. So between the 28th and the 3rd. From the 28th to the 3rd. The Miami Heat. You know what? I'm gonna give you a local native a little bit of bun here. The Miami Heat had 3 games just as well. The very first game they had was Friday night on the 29th. And that night, we saw the Brooklyn Nets coming to Miami. And folks, can I tell you, I saw this game live. I saw Hollis Jefferson. I saw, is his name Larkin? Crap. I'm forgetting these people's names. But I saw Ken. I seen New York ball. I seen Brooklyn ball without Okafor and without Russell. And yet, they managed to come away with a 111-87 victory in Miami, folks. That is almost a 30-point blowout without your 2 stars. And yes, Hassan Whiteside was back for Miami. I told you I was at this game. I told you I was there to witness this. And can I tell you, it was one of the most invigorating things I've been to in my life. Only because I was so able to enjoy this game. Because I am the kind of person, if I watch my team on your home court, I treat it like a home game for me. It's the only way for me to get enjoyment out of it. What am I supposed to do? Sit there the whole entire time and just listen to Miami fans just root for their teams? No. Like Destiny's Child. No. That is not what's going to happen there. I'm going to root for my team like it's a home game. So when Miami has the ball, and this was a perfect game too because it was a blowout. So I was the only one in my section making noise. So I was hoping that my voice was carrying all the way down to the court, which I doubt it was, even though I have one of the most carrying voices that most people could have. When the Miami Heat had the ball, I yelled, defense! 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 When the Miami Heat went to the free throw line, I yelled, miss it! Miss it! And then vice versa. When Brooklyn went to the line, I was in the crowd. Trying to make sure everybody keep quiet so that we can focus on the free throws. And when the Brooklyn Nets had the ball, you heard a thunderous chant of Brooklyn, 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 wildin'. Talking about wild thoughts. I had the whole crowd up there vexed. But I'm gonna tell you, I had fun though. As I got a chance to, not only did I get a chance to see my Brooklyn Nets that night, before the end of the year, I also got an opportunity to see my good friend, my Cancerian brethren, DJ Scepter, DJing live at the Heat game. Check me out. Check out the video on the Twitter page. Not the Twitter page. It's on the Twitter page. It's also on the Twitter page. But on the Instagram page, myt-sports, myt-sports. You'll see DJ Scepter mixing. Had the crowd moving. Like, even though they were taking the L, the crowd was still in good spirit up there because DJ Scepter was doing his thug fizzle. Couldn't be upset at that, folks. It was a good night. For me, at least. So, as we said, the Miami Heat took a loss, 111-87. But Miami Heat able to turn it around, as they also had a back-to-back. And in their back-to-back, they actually won. As they went into Orlando, they faced their in-state rival, the Magic, came away with a 117-111 victory, and in a sense, was able to erase a little bit of that stench that was there from the Brooklyn game. Because that, folks, was not nice at all, what happened to those boys. But like I said, for somebody like me, it was a beautiful game. And it is tonight, obviously. And to be honest with you, tonight is on next week's show. But tonight, we have the Miami Heat taking on the Detroit Pistons in Miami. And hopefully Miami doesn't do what they did against the Brooklyn Nets. And they're able to come away with a victory. Or they should come away with a victory in Detroit. As Detroit, even though Detroit still sits in that number 4 seed in the East, things haven't quite been going their way. So the Miami Heat, like I said, they've had a couple of victories. So them splitting that week, they find themselves sitting now firmly in the 6th spot, or in the 7th spot, I should say, above 500 with a record of 19-17. But we ain't done. Let's talk about this week coming up, as soon as we come from this commercial break, because we can't keep talking about the Heat without me letting you know where to find this brethren of mine, DJ Scepter. Because not only is he DJing at the Heat games, well, you know what? Just listen. put you in the game. Being taken advantage of isn't a game, and it needs to stop. Aren't you tired of being ripped? Nope, that's not what happened. Stuck trying to figure out what to do on a Friday again? Well, stop worrying and stop thinking and head down to Capone's nightclub in downtown Fort Lauderdale. This is where you'll find DJ Scepter mixing in the lounge, so you can start dancing and start drinking. And we understand, some of you may be an introvert, so you may want to start drinking so you can start dancing. But regardless of what you do, you make sure you do it with DJ Scepter. That's every Friday from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Ladies, you bring your sexy. Fellas, you bring your swag. It's going down at Capone's. But wait, there's more. Trying to figure out what to do on a Wednesday? Yes, hump day? You'll find DJ Scepter at O'Malley's from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. That's right there on 441 between Coconut Creek and Royal Palm Boulevard. DJ Scepter plays everywhere that you want to be. Whether that's a birthday, a wedding, bar mitzvah, quinceanera, proms, corporate events, bachelor or bachelorette parties. DJ Scepter puts a royal touch on everything. And for reservations, just send a simple email to bookings@djscepter.com. That's BOOKINGS at djscepter.com. Imagine that. And we are back to the Mighty Sports Podcast. I am still your host, Alan Thomar Taylor. If you're still listening, that means you're still listening, hopefully right here on mytradio.net. But I understand you guys have been listening now for 3 years. So that means you may understand that I have multiple channels to get this to you. So if it's not just mytradio.net, that's mytradio.net, that means you can also be listening live on myt-sports.net, myt-sports.net. Or you could be listening on TuneIn Radio under MyT Radio, MYT Radio. Or you could be getting it from the MixLR app, MYT Radio, again, MyT Radio. Just remember, regardless how you're listening, I understand this is just the place, this is the format. This is where we go because we want every voice to be MyT. Whew. We got some things in the work, and don't worry, my bad, Lou. We're gonna get some more we're gonna get these podcasts to you. Very first one of the year, you will get this on 24/7 Miami. You'll get it right here as well too. Let me get this over to you, so we can start getting these things worked out. I apologize. I shouldn't have left you. We're on a dope podcast. Step two. Step two. Danger zone. So let's continue back into it because you guys already know what we're talking about. But in case you forgot, let me remind you with a little bit of. If you smell what talent is taken. So as we get into this week of the NBA season, I want to take a moment to look past the Knicks real quick. As we're gonna get back into the Knicks in the Heat, right? But I want to take a look into this week more than anything else. We have DeMar DeRozan that puts up 52 points in Toronto the other day. And as I keep calling Toronto a gimmicky team, it's that DeMar DeRozan has found ways to expound his game where he has now found a way to be a three-point shooter. But what I am not a fan of is him or anybody else that all of a sudden keeps holding up these little pieces of flimsy papers that has 2-digit numbers on them just because they do these little personal best for the team. I understand you put up 52 for the team, but stop making references to the great Wilt Chamberlain that dropped 100. You dropped half of what he did, and you're holding up paper like you did his kind of work. I can understand, like, maybe you broke 60, 70, 80. But for a 50 burger? I don't know if I'm that impressed, B. You may need to take your maple syrup behind McDonald's, going behind at 4 o'clock in the morning with your little chubby point guard friend, and guan somewhere, brethren, guan. But he's not the person I really want to talk about this week. What I want to talk about is Isaiah Thomas finally returning to the lineup, folks. Isaiah Thomas, yes. Not the Isaiah Thomas, the bad boy from Detroit. The disrespected Isaiah Thomas. The Isaiah Thomas that we have said right here, the Cavs are going to go ahead and disrespect. Listen, pay attention to that kid coming out of Oklahoma that is putting up these 20-20 games. Pay attention to him. Pay attention to his height. I'm going to start looking at the metrics of him, because if his metrics say 6'1" or better, the Cavs have Brooklyn's pick. And why would they not use it when you have a point guard that is willing to come back against the game versus Portland, but not a game against the team that let him go? It's because, you were hoping that you need to get off your rust first, and you didn't want to have to get off your rust against the team that sent you packing. You didn't want to have to get up your rust against the phenomenal Kyrie Irving, the young assassin. You didn't want to have to get off the rust against Marcus Smart. E equals shutdown defense. So you go up against a team that, if I'm not mistaken, was lacking Damian Lillard. I have to check the numbers. I have to check the box on that one. If I'm not mistaken, I remember hearing that Damian Lillard may have been out that game. But that's when you decided. And look, you looked great. But you could have looked great against Boston. It's because you knew that you wouldn't be able to go half-ass. Like I said, it was just too big expectation. So you got to wait a little bit to come back. And you know what? Can I say something about Cleveland Cavaliers and also and the Brooklyn Nets in the same breath? Very oddly, is the way they've allowed their players to come back from injury also is a plus in to their organization. As you hear me giving you ish about the game that Isaiah Thomas decided to come back in, I'm not banging the process, because there was a process that was there where they allowed Isaiah Thomas to go and get warmed up in the D-League. They allowed Isaiah Thomas to come and get a couple of practices in there before they allowed Isaiah Thomas to come back and make his season debut. I just believe that his season debut should be against Boston and not Portland. That's something for a different story. I guess also you want your season debut to be at home and not on the road. Whatever little excuses you have to say that you had a yellow streak that you painted up and down your little 5'9" frame, and you tucked your tail and you ran from playing your team that just cut you because you were a little too emotional. But the reason why I want to talk about Brooklyn in the same sense, because not necessarily injuries, but acclimation of players. It's almost the same reason why I told you that Brooklyn played Miami and they didn't have D'Angelo Russell or Jahlil Okafor. Jahlil Okafor was just recently traded over to the Brooklyn Nets. And what they wanted him to do was to get him a couple of practices with this team so that they can build some kind of continuity first before just throwing him in there and saying, hey, I know I've been disgusting today. This is one of those things. Like, listen, barbarian. Me a barbarian sometimes. You have to understand that. I come from a barbaric kind of atmosphere. Who? So the Brooklyn Nets very slowly allowed Jahlil Okafor to get some practice, to practice with the team, to get some rhythm in the D-League, to get back into a basketball state of mind before they debuted him. And not only debuted him, but debuted him at home. It's something completely different than what's going on in Cleveland. Because I guarantee you, if they were playing against Philly, Jahlil Okafor would have came back to play against that team against that game against Philly. A Philly team that is no longer in the immediate playoff picture in the East anymore. But they are also on pace to get back Malik Monk. Yeah, you forgot about him, didn't you? You forgot about this guy that was drafted high but has been sitting down low. You forgot about this guy that was sitting out because he had something was wrong with his shoulder and they were calling his jump shot glitchy. You forgot about him. Yes, folks. Malik Monk is coming back for the second half of the season. And his shoulder should be right. So this week in basketball, we get a couple of things that may happen. Because like I said, we have a bunch of people that are coming back from injury. At the same time, we have a couple people going onto the injury list. The bearded one, James Harden, pulled a hammy. Hamstring, for those who understand. I'm not talking about holiday food. But he pulled a hammy. And he's set to be out for about 2 weeks. As Houston Rockets are no longer the number one team in the West. The Golden State Warriors have taken that over as they've gotten back Stephen Curry, who decided to make 10 3-pointers in his debut game. Isaiah Thomas, who's too scared to face his team because he's in his feelings. Just saying. Stephen Curry came back and dropped 10 3-pointers as he came back from injury. So things are shaping up. Philly can make a late season run. We can see Golden State continue to get things right and make a late season push to push a Houston team down into the rankings. As listen, I'm not saying that Oklahoma City's going to catch Houston, but they are 8 games out without James Harden going to be there. And we saw what happened when after Chris Paul came back and he had to go back down, how Houston struggled. And now James Harden goes back down and we see Chris Paul trying to get there. Listen, there is one thing that Chris Paul is jinxed with, and that is he doesn't have a team that has done work in the Western Conference Championship, or a conference championship at that. So if he's left to run this team, is it possible? Houston falls to a 4 seed? 5 seed? 6 seed? Is it possible? Well, in the words of Kevin Garnett, anything's possible! But Houston should start worrying. Like I said, this is an interesting week. New York continues to take on Washington tonight. And we may get an update on that score in the next segment for you guys. On Friday the 5th, they take on the Miami Heat. And as they come into Miami, and hopefully they can repeat what little brother Brooklyn Nets did when they came down here in Miami. Viva la Miami. We love our Miami. Next up, Knicks are gonna have a back-to-back as they play Saturday on the 7th, as they go into Dallas to take on the Mavericks, and on Wednesday, the 10th, they take on Chicago Bulls in New York. Hopefully, they can stop losing to Chicago, as Chicago has found a little bit of rhythm ever since Mirotic has come back from a broken face from his teammate. The Miami Heat this same week, like I said, tonight they're gonna on Friday the 5th, they're gonna be taking on the New York Knicks. Then on Sunday the 7th, they'll be taking on Utah in Miami as well. And then on 2 days later, on Tuesday, they'll be going up to Toronto to take on DeMar DeRozan and see how many points he's gonna hold up on a piece of paper. And also on Wednesday the 10th, they'll be taking on Indiana in Indiana, but that's also a game for another time. When we come back from this commercial break, we will continue to talk about disrespect. But who am I talking about this time? That and more on the Mighty Sports Podcast.
Let me put you on the game. Being taken advantage of isn't a game, and it needs to stop. Aren't you tired of being ripped off by those other guys? Then
Head to Multiverse Video Games and get the value you deserve on your games and gaming products. Games cost money, and you shouldn't feel like you're just giving them away. So why continuously buy a membership for prices and deals that you should be getting anyway? Multiverse Games not only has fair pricing and great trading deals, Multiverse has a wide variety of games, not just all your popular next-gen titles, but also all your favorite old-school titles and systems, starting as early as Atari and Nintendo to as current as PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. And yes, that does include PlayStations, GameCubes, and Xboxes in between. Even family owned and operated for over 10 years, just off the intersection of 183rd and 7th Avenue in the Nurses Registry Plaza. That's conveniently located at 830 Northwest 183rd Street, Miami Gardens, Florida 33169. Believe it or not, just 5 minutes from Sun Life Stadium, $7.90 the ticket, and oh no, let's not forget Tootsie's Adult Entertainment Center. Multiverse Games, where you save more so you can play more.
What is the New York Knicks for? And we are back with the Mighty Sports Podcast. I'm still your host, Talent Omar Taylor. You're still listening to Mighty Sports Podcast, and hopefully you're listening either on mytradio.net live. Because listen, we're here every Wednesday night at 8-ish. And we give you the podcast. And I told you that hopefully by the time we start this next segment, I will have an update for you guys. So, as promised, we have an update on the Knicks score with just about a minute and a half left in the game. The New York Knicks are trailing the Washington Wizards in Washington, 103-118, as it looked like the Knicks are going to drop another game on the road just to fall to a record of 18-20. We will get more with you with that update later on, as we may talk about Knicks, but you know what? We ain't going to talk about Knicks. We're going to continue to talk about Kyrie Irving for a little bit longer. Not Kyrie Irving, but Isaiah Thomas. Because I hope you guys don't think I'm just shifting weight and just picking on a new guy, on Isaiah Thomas, but you have to fully understand what's going to go on with him. Isaiah Thomas, for as much as he's going to capture he's going to get national coverage again. And as much as he's going to capture our heart again, or you guys' heart again, he's going to play on your soft spot. He's going to give you this story. He's going to be this great comeback story. I don't see Cleveland giving him money. And if they do, they're only doing it because they think that's the way to keep LeBron. So then what you do? You're going to have, man, I'm telling you, it's so much easier for Cleveland to get a young point guard in there and have him learn from LeBron on how to be a point guard and see the court and everything else than it is to give Isaiah Thomas 6 years. Excuse me. Excuse me. To give him 6 years and an upward of $200 million. Like, it's not worth it. I'm telling you. No team is going to want to pay him $30+ million a year. Yes, well, that's what we're talking about here. $30 million+ a year for the next 6 years. Who's going to want to give Isaiah Thomas that? 5'9", bad hip, ball stopper, ball hawker, can't play defense. And I'm just saying, he's not Iverson. And none of these teams are willing to, and listen, and I'm not saying that he can't do what Iverson did if he had the proper support, because we saw what happened in Boston. But our teams are going to want to have to build that kind of team around him, around a guy that you have to hide. And maybe that's the part that I can't get around, is that on defense, they have to hide him. That's the reason why it worked so well in Boston. Because you had Avery Bradley. You had Marcus Smart. You had, what's this guy's name? You had Crawford. Those are three defensive guys that can cover everything from the point guard to the power forward for you. And allows you to hide on the weakest one. You show me where that's at in Cleveland. Because now what you're talking about is possibly is that you're not going to be able to start Dwayne Wade when you start Isaiah Thomas. Because what are you going to talk about? Putting Dwayne Wade on Isaiah Thomas's biggest matchup? So you let's say you get a lineup: Isaiah Thomas, Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Crawford, and Love. So that means you're putting Dwayne Wade on the point guard Isaiah Thomas should be guarding? Because, you know, like, let's say LeBron, because let's say LeBron's man is somebody that's also capable as well. You can't depend on LeBron. LeBron has his own hang-ups, his own headaches. So now what you're talking about is putting him on the floor with somebody like Iman Shumpert now. Because you'll have to maybe go that route. Or J.R. Smith, maybe. Because J.R. Smith could probably keep up with one of the faster, bigger point guards. You understand? So there's little ways you're going to have to do it. You know, put Crawford on, let's say you play at Washington, you put in Shumpert on John Wall, and you put in Crawford on Beal, and you're allowing the rest to do whatever it does. LeBron on Ottis Porter. And then where are you hiding Isaiah Thomas? See this, and you know what? And this is how somebody like Isaiah Thomas gets to benefit from the times, because, man, it's just bad that, like I say, even if they played a team like Miami, let's say he gets stuck on a guy like Kelly Olynyk, a former teammate of his, he doesn't have to worry about Kelly Olynyk taking him into the post. As things are going down in Miami, because listen, they can't get Dion Waiters right either. But talking about, let's get right. Let's talk about what is right. As we shift gears from one Miami team that looks to be on a good path. Like I said, Miami's right now sitting in the number 7 team in the East, and they just got back Hassan Whiteside, and they're trying to rebuild a little bit of that continuity back. Listen, Miami has a couple of trading bait guys that they can possibly use, like a Wayne Ellington, maybe. You know, maybe throwing Tyler in there, maybe. But Wayne Ellington's contract, with his expiring contract, I think he has like $7 million somewhere on there this year, and he's trying to look for some money elsewhere, or to continue playing. They can possibly trade him away to somebody. I don't know who yet, but it's a possibility. Just like right now, there's a possibility for almost any team to win in the NFC. Granted how wide open it is. And talking about wide open, can I say right here on the podcast, congratulations to Luciana for winning the Women's Fantasy Football League. Yes, she played in the money round, because that was the round I was going to decide to reward. Woo! Don't know what happened there. That was the money round I was going to decide to roll. Because listen, unfortunately, ladies, you're going to have to find this out the hard way. I'll find this out from the podcast. But if you didn't draft your team, that was one strike against you. If you had weeks where you had players that were out, players that were injured, players, you know, because you weren't not trading players, but benching players in and out, or moving players in and out of your roster, then you also got points for that too. I needed people that participated. So if you thought you were just gonna put yourself into the league and not do anything all year, and hopefully because of your auto draft make it into the last round and see if you get this money, no. I rewarded activity. And luckily for me, we had Carissa and Luciana, two ladies that were active. And granted, they didn't make it to the championship round. They both made it to the semi-final round, or to the runner-up round. Which means that made that runner-up round the money round. And I'm going to say this is a heartbreaking defeat, because this has to be now for the third straight year? Second straight year now? That Carissa has been right there in the money round and lost. But congratulations. Like I said, as Luciana was a first-year player, ladies. She studied, she listened, she took some tips, she listened to the podcast, listened to her boyfriend. And she made she made the right moves. You know, she took some risk. She did her homework, and she played for her first year. She learned on the fly. Basically, she utilized her poop time. Like, when people ask me, I don't have no time to play, I'm like, yo, all it takes is poop time. It's your poop time. Literally, like, your phone is in there with you. I know it is. There's not a person out here that isn't taking their phone, laptop, or tablet in the bathroom with them. It was your poop time. Just like how week 17 of the NFL was poop time. And this is why I wholeheartedly agree. And if you guys listen to the podcast, this is the second week in a row I'm going to mention this, that yes, I am going to change the ruling, and we're going to change how this playoff system works. Because week 17 was poop time. And it made our picks look like poop. So let's do a quick rundown, because I swear to God, like I had to have been like on crack or something, the way that how bad these picks are. Like, yeah, I swear, like, seriously, like, that bad, that you would have swore I had a trap house and my neighbors were gonna call the cops on me. Like, I must have been doing that much dope. So first game up, we had Green Bay versus Detroit. We picked Green Bay to win that game. Green Bay disappointed us as Detroit won that game 35-11. Next up, we had Minnesota taking on Chicago in Minnesota. We had Minnesota winning that game. Minnesota did win that game 23-10. Next up, we had we had Houston going into Indianapolis and taking on the Colts. We had the Colts pulling off a victory there, and as they did, 22-13. Next up was Pittsburgh versus Cleveland, as Pittsburgh managed to squeak out that victory, 28-24. Next up, we had the Jets taking on New England, and New England took care of business at home, as they should, as they beat the New York Jets 26-6. The New York Giants pulled out a victory over the Washington Redskins 18-10, as the Philadelphia Eagles put up a donut against the Dallas Cowboys, as the Dallas Cowboys came with a victory 6-0 on the road at that. Jacksonville went into Tennessee to beat them 10-15, as Buffalo came down here in Miami and they lit them up for a 22-16, but unfortunately they happened to lose LaShawn McCoy. So while Buffalo took care of their business to try to get into the playoffs, and after watching what we just talked about, did we talk about it yet? And after what happened in Baltimore, Cincinnati won a last-second game of 31-27. And so as Buffalo managed to squeak into the playoffs, they may not have LaShawn McCoy to help put themselves on that running back's back or shoulders so they can carry themselves into maybe a first-round win. We'll talk about Buffalo's opponent in a second. As we already told you, Baltimore lost that game against Cincinnati, as we had Baltimore winning that game. But hey, that's what happens when you have these inter-rival games. With San Diego put up 30 against Oakland, as it seems like Oakland's going to have themselves a new coach with John Gruden. Yeah, I'm just going to gloss right over that. We'll talk about that some more another time. Listen, we have a whole off season of football to get into that one. We have the Seattle Seahawks that lost to Arizona in Seattle, and that makes it official. Seattle will not be making the playoffs, and I don't want to hear any more talk even out of me saying that the Seattle Seahawks, because even after I've said it for a couple of years, I also came to the realization as they struggled this year that there are no New England Patriots of the NFC. There's no team that has that kind of consistency. I had the LA Rams beating San Francisco, but Jimmy G happened to prove me wrong again as he pulls off his 5th straight victory as San Francisco goes into the offseason with all bright skies, with all rainbows, and just thinking like, hey, we just need to start building on what we already have now here. Carolina went into Atlanta and put up a straight duck, and I swear to God, it looked like Carolina wasn't even trying to win. So now Atlanta wins 22-10. Atlanta makes themselves into the playoffs as they're going to have themselves a nice little interesting matchup in their first round. Kansas City took on Denver and they beat Denver to make sure that they solidified them spots into the playoffs. And New Orleans went into Tampa Bay and lost. As I told you to watch out for, guys, listen, as nothing is on the line. Watch Jameis Winston just pass this ball around. And in another game, I think he passed the ball for like 50-something freaking times. Come away with a victory of 31-24, and that shapes up our playoffs matchup as Tennessee and Kansas City. And obviously this is all wild card. And these are the first games going to be played on Saturday. Tennessee versus Kansas City. And then Atlanta taking on the LA Rams. And let's go ahead and make these picks real quick for you guys. I have Kansas City beating Tennessee, and I want LA Rams to win just because they're the new kids on the block, and it's something you don't realize it, folks. Only one team that was in the NFC playoffs last year, from last year, made it this year. And that team barely made it. And that is the Atlanta Falcons. One team, folks. Let that sink in for parity. Because there's no Green Bays, there's no Seattles, there's no Detroits, there's no Dallas, there's no New York. None of that. So I kind of want to see if Atlanta can catch a spark, knowing that they've been here before, and seeing know what they kind of have to do to pull out a victory. I'm curious. I don't know if I believe in Atlanta that much. But I'm gonna pick them to win this game out of experience. If they lose this game, I think I'm riding with the LA Rams all the way through. After that, until they play up against New Orleans Saints, and then I just gotta figure New Orleans Saints are gonna have to win. Just like I'm gonna pick Jacksonville to honestly blow out Buffalo. I apologize, but without LaShawn McCoy, I don't give them a snowball's hell and chance. And then brings us up to the next game, and Buffalo versus Jacksonville happens on Sunday, by the way. The next Sunday game is gonna be Carolina versus New Orleans, and this is a game that's gonna be interesting because now, like I said, the parity really comes in, right? You have New Orleans that's been there before to a Super Bowl and won one. You've had Carolina that's been to a Super Bowl and lost one. You have Atlanta that's been to a Super Bowl and lost one. So you have three teams that has been to a Super Bowl and lost one, and they've all in the same division. I don't know what's gonna happen, but the fact that Carolina thought that it was so easy for them to be so lackadaisical in Atlanta to allow Atlanta in, I'm gonna pick Carolina to win just because they were assholes in Week 17. And there was no reason why they should have took that game off. There's no reason why they should have been in their P's and Q's. There's no reason why they should have played so lackadaisical without any purpose whatsoever. That is a mental breakdown. And I don't know if you easily hiccup from that. Because I think the same part of you that thought that it was okay for you to take that game off, thinks it's okay that you can just turn it on whenever you want, and it doesn't just happen that way. And I see Drew Brees and these boys hungrier than what anybody in Carolina is right now. I'm gonna pick New Orleans to run through Carolina. We're talking about 6 scores here, folks. I don't know if it's gonna be 6 touchdowns, but we're talking about 6 scores, easy, for New Orleans. And that, folks, is the show. I want to thank you guys for listening. It's 2018. I'm super excited. I'm excited as anybody can be, as by the end of this month, we're going to have episode 100. I haven't even started booking people for the show yet. Man, time goes by so freaking fast. You won't even imagine. But once again, I thank you guys for listening. And thank you. Stay tuned for more episodes, please. As I will be here right back again next Wednesday, 8-ish. It's supposed to be 8 p.m. But it's 8-ish. So thank you. Stay tuned. Stay blessed. And just know that with time, everything will work itself out. So please don't stress. And I thank you for listening as we keep building on this journey of one hand washing the other and both trying to wash the face. Are you gonna play the outro music so I can stop babbling at the end? Like act like I'm trying to give like a soliloquy to end the Oscars? Like play it already.
Sorry, boys. All the stitches in the world can't sew me together.
Marvin Lewis got an extension for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Lay down. Always knew I'd make a stop there. But a lot later than a whole gang of people thought. Last call for drinks. Bars closing down. Sun's out. Where we go for breakfast? Don't wanna go far. Rough night. Tired, baby. Tired. My tea.
Let's do this right. My tea.